Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute and sharing how to host your very own annual family summit planning meeting. This is regardless if you are solo, you have a partner, or you're just getting started in your life. So, my husband and I started this ritual about 10 plus years ago. We had an annual family summit meeting, the Gordon Family Summit, as we called it. We were living in San Diego at the time and were, just didn't have a lot of money as newlyweds. And we rented a place in Lake Arrowhead for the weekend and hosted our first annual summit. A lot of what is in the guide or the download that I'll share here in a moment so that you have your own copy is an exact like framework and format that we have used for over 10 years now. And we have hosted our own annual summit. Annually, we've skipped previous 2 years, but we're getting on back on track this year. COVID kind of jumbled all that up. I've also taught this inside of my company and my software company. Towards the end of the year is always that reflected time, the holidays, the newness of the new year. And if you're anything like me, I have absolutely failed at setting New Year's resolutions. So, this is just a great framework. You can pull this out at any moment or any time during the year. And I'm a really firm believer that there's a reason New Year's resolutions don't stick. They're too big, they're too hefty, there's too many of them. It's, everyone's drinking green juice and smoothies for the month of January, or what's the other one? Dry January. And then February hits and all bets are off and everything's out the window. So, my goal today is to share this simple guide and this framework, this downloadable that can help you prompt some ideas and hopefully hosting your very own and first summit. Again, this is regardless if you're solo, you have a partner, even business partnerships, you'll see really important information in here. So if you're starting a company and you also have a founder, these are really important frameworks. So let's dive into this. All right. I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm also going to share the PDF inside of LinkedIn. But if you would like your own copy, please shoot me a DM. Summit guide, free summit guide, and I'll shoot it over to you as well. Okay, so let me open. Oops. I'm going to share the guide here for you all. And I will bring you through the steps here. Okay. Let's see. Present. Share screen. Let's see. Where is entire screen? All right. It's in a PDF, so I'm trying to figure out how to share just the PDF with you all. Select tab to share. Window, preview. All right, I will bring it up in our Google Drive here. Founder Summit Guide. There we go. Okay, now I can share my screen. There we go. All right. Successful Founder Summit, Family Summit. There's a bunch of names that we can call it here. So, all right. So we realized, my husband and I, after we got married, we've been together going on 20 plus years now. It's like, why did we not learn this stuff in school? And no one taught us this. And so we got the idea from some dear friends of ours who had done an abridged version of this. And I created this guide a couple of years ago, right before COVID started. And I'm finally dusting it off. And we will be, my husband and I, will be following our very similar process we've used the 10 plus years. What's really exciting is that we have 10 plus years of Google Notes from our meetings. It's absolutely amazing and magical to go back through and read those and what we put, what we were processing, and what if some, what our goals were 10 plus years ago. Okay, so just to bring you through the very high level, and we'll keep today's session short and to the point. So probably end here 30 minutes after the hour here. So really just like, what's the basics? Why would you want to do one? Getting ready, how to rock your summit, and then kind of the seven, what we call the seven core connectors on what we go through. And big questions. What are the big questions you should be asking? And this can be a multi-day process. It can be a multi-week process. You could start it in November, do another session in December, and finish it in January. There's no hard and fast rules here. Make it your own. So don't feel like you have to follow a timeline or the exact piece of this. We, in fact, did a mini summit last summer. It was just time to check in and drop into some of the bigger life questions that we had going on. How to keep the ball rolling. We have a sample summit timeline and then just a note-taking format. So I just want to go through the high level here with you all. Okay, so the who. Again, whether you're solo, it's your partner, a larger family, it's really for anyone that is just at a point in your life where you really want to have a framework or a system that works for you, whether you're doing this every January and every June, or you could do this once a quarter as a check-in, or you can make it an annual thing. Make it your own. So really, it's dedicated time with no distractions. That's the biggest key thing here. It could be a 2-hour session. It could be a 2-day session, right? So again, really making it your own, but it's dedicated time with no distractions. What do I mean by that? No work, no kids. Oftentimes you're choosing desert, mountain, or beach to really just get away and drop in. A lot of times our summits have been, we started off solo first. So I was in Laguna Beach one year, or actually Palm Springs, and my husband went to Joshua Tree, and we had 2 days off on our own solo, thinking through the big questions that were in this guide. And then we came back and met in San Diego, which was a really beautiful way to do it. When? So every year we recommend at least once a year. Okay. If you need to do it more, even better. A Google Drive folder holds decades of our notes. And I'm just so grateful. I was looking at a few of them this morning. One year we didn't record our summit, and I regret it. We were doing it driving. We were on a 9-hour drive between San Diego to Reno. It was probably longer than that. And we did it in the car, which we had gotten in this flow where just that long open road was a great place to do it. And we didn't take that notes that year. We really do regret it. So make sure you take notes. Where and how. So that's what we're going to go through. So the why. So we're all moving at rocket speed. Life gets busy. You're in the hamster wheel. And then one day you kind of poke your head out and you're just going, wait, what are we doing here? So if you're anything like me, going through elementary school and middle school and high school and some college, there wasn't a lot around family planning, annual summits, setting goals. Where else are you supposed to learn these things? And so this is just a culmination of years and years and years of things that we've tried that have really helped set us up on our path to hit the goals that we've set. Okay. So again, if you're an individual, if you're a founder, if you're a family, you can go through a variety of versions of this. We've actually taken certain sections out of this guide and done some very intentional one-offs with my in-laws or with my mom and dad. And so that's been a really special thing as well. So getting ready, compare your calendars, decide on a length. So we're getting ready to decide on ours. We're going to do it from our home here in Reno, Nevada. We'll probably do it over 2 to 3 days. Since my husband is so busy with work, he still has to check in. I wouldn't normally recommend that, but he has some pretty massive deadlines. The holidays are coming. We have family coming. So I'm in the midst of putting this into our calendar. We'll probably do it over like a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and do some half days in there, right? And you typically want to set aside, 6 to 8 hours to do this. Choosing a location. In the past, we've done, 2 to 3 days away. So we'd rent an Airbnb in Lake Arrowhead and Donner Lake and Tahoe. You can do it at your own home. You can go to a friend or family member's home. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Planning out snacks. Maybe you want food delivery, just, getting rid of all the noise, or maybe cooking a meal is something that you really enjoy, like sharing the cooking of a meal together. So that could definitely be something that you like. Okay, so we're going to get into a few more things. So to kick things off, some questions that we like to ponder is, am I learning new things? Am I taking new risks? In what ways do my partner and I agree on how to live our lives? Could we dream bigger? So you definitely want to take notes. Okay, take good care of yourselves. This can be very tiring. Lots of brain exercising, especially for the financial section. There'll typically be someone in the partnership that is pulling numbers and looking at budgeting and things like that. So hydrate, eat healthy, try to limit your alcohol intake, because this is, a couple full days worth of work. All right, let's jump in. Our 7 core connectors. This is how it is laid out in our Google Drive notes or Word or however you take notes, right? So we have 7 sections for each of these, and I'm going to go through these here pretty quickly. So number 1 is family, and this can include discussing having kids or not having kids, for example, depending on where you're at in your life. And so personally speaking, my husband and I are both happily child-free by choice. But that wasn't always, I'm 46 and gosh, we started doing this in our early 30s. And so that wasn't always the case. And we wanted to check in and constantly be checking where we were both sitting, in that realm. So deep conversation. Now, in terms of family and our upcoming summit, we will probably talk about our nieces and the inevitable pieces of, aging parents, right? So our conversations around family have evolved and changed over the last decade. And so we'll touch in on what that means for us. Friends, so family, friends. What does that mean for you? At times we missed our friends because we'd had our heads down working inside of our company and realized that we wanted to host more dinner parties, for example. And so we were very intentional. Gosh, we need more connection with our friends. How can we make that happen? And so it was, once a month, once a quarter. How can we be really intentional about setting up that time with friends? Faith and spirituality. So was another, it's a very personal area, but checking in that realm. I will tell you that my husband grew up Catholic in the Catholic Church and was baptized. And I did not. I didn't grow up from a religious background. And so having these conversations for us didn't typically tend to come up before we were married because both of us were just rooted more spiritually and more not any specific religion, right? But after we got married, we both talked a lot about how we wanted this to show up in our lives and inside of our small family. And so again, not skipping over what that means. Fitness is another one. This is where we would tend to say, gosh, we want to sign up and train to a half marathon or a marathon, or couch to 5K was a really big one for us. So fitness, health, and love, right, is a key area that we always touch on. Now, I will tell you that each of us commit to one another to spending time prior to each of these sections and jotting down our own notes and our own thoughts prior to coming to the meeting. Super helpful. It avoids groupthink, it avoids frustration, it allows you to give yourself time and space and grace to really think about the things that matter to you so that you can come to the conversation about the things that you want to bring up in the family dynamic, in the partnership, and whatever that might be. Fun and travel. So we very early on were able to set up a travel fund. And in the early days, when we barely had any money, it was at least making sure that we were putting $10 or $20 a week into a travel fund and watching it grow. And then it was, we can take that 4 or 5 day camping trip and pay for the campsites and get to the national park, right? And then that led us, gosh, when did we take our big trip to Belgium? 7-ish years ago. That wasn't inexpensive, right? It was a Belgian beer tour trip, was just spectacular. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to skimp, and we saved for that trip for years, probably the better part of 3 to 4 years we saved for that trip so that we had money to maybe do the extra excursion or an upgraded hotel. And so, being very intentional about what you want to save for, and consistency and discipline is where you really start to develop those muscles, but you've got to start somewhere, right? Fortress was around our house. So our actual surroundings, your sanctuary. So getting organized, rearranging furniture, where do you live? So our space, whether it was the office or where we're living, is a very, very important thing. And probably more so now than ever before because of a lot of people working from home, right? Um, I'll stop the sharing for one moment. Okay. So, home, I'm sitting in my home office. My husband has his own home office. We used to share it. I got kicked out because I talk really loud and I'm always on the phone. Okay. So, I think Fortress is a really important piece because our space provides so much energy and light, or it can take away from. So, don't ignore setting aside some additional budget to paint a wall or put up some decorations, or get a new microphone for work, or whatever it is, right? Really important things around Fortress. All right, that was number 6. And number 7 is financial. This is the big one. This is the one that we get asked about most often from our younger friends and family. We do not stay clear from talking about finances with friends. I think that the stigma of not understanding, I don't need to know the deep details of, what friends are making and how much they're in debt or not in debt. But I think there is a way to talk about finances with inside your family and with your friends and even work colleagues that is very important and very healthy. And I'm sure, as we all know, finances can be the number one or number two leading cause of divorce, and running out of money. So, the number two reasons companies fail, startups in the early days, is co-founder conflict, and you run out of money. So, what better way than to build a strong foundation with your founder or someone you're thinking of going into business with, then instilling these types of rituals and frameworks into those dynamics, right? And really understanding where they're at with their faith and spirituality, right? I would want to know that about a business partner. I would want to know that about a partner. And finances is where people really, really tend to get tricked up here. So, giving, saving, investing, creative business endeavors, how to prioritize your spending. These are really, really important pieces that cannot be missed. And if there's one thing that you take from this summit guide, is do not skip over the financial piece and having that very intentional meeting. Okay. So, typically, my husband would prepare a spreadsheet on the personal side. We had a personal burn spreadsheet in the very early days when we started our tech startup. We wanted to understand, um, where we were at in terms of burning cash and how much runway we had in order to get our company to flying altitude. So this was around 2012. Staying organized is really important. We've used apps, QuickBooks or Mint. Today we have, a Google spreadsheet, and our businesses are inside of QuickBooks. And then another thing that has really eased our financial stress was setting up a slush fund. And we learned this from my in laws. So we didn't always have that, but it's a slush fund for each of us. I'm just kind of reading from our guide here is every week we put in a set amount of money. This way you can bank up enough money over time to splurge. We use our funds to buy something you'd normally feel judged or guilty of. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I'm an avid snowboarder. And for the longest time, I've only had one snowboard. But the last few winters, I'm like, okay, I want to build out, the different models of boards based on backcountry snowboarding, based on powder days, those sorts of things. And I have worked insanely hard to get where I'm at. And so I should be able to not feel guilty about buying the snowboard that I wanted to buy. So last winter, I will never forget, we were at Mount Bachelor, and I had rented a demo board, a demo powder board for the day, and I fell in love with the snowboard just immediately. I have never felt this way about a piece of sports equipment. And my husband was in the parking lot. We're hanging out by the fire, and I said, I really want to buy this board. And he said, no problem. Here's how much you have in your slush fund. And I got to not even think twice about it. I walked back into the snowboard shop and I said, great, I'm buying this. And so having your individual slush funds, my husband's really into golf. And look, we set aside our weekly amount. He can bank his for as long as he wants. But when he wants to go buy that new golf club or he's really into baseball cards and buy the $200 baseball card that he wants, right? There's no like, oh my God, I gotta go check with my partner and blah, blah, blah. And is it in the budget? And so if and when time allows, a slush fund has probably been one of the most, when people say, what are the secrets to being together this long? This is one of them. Not shying away from the uncomfortable and awkward conversations around finances. Typically in a partnership, there's one person who's more numbers driven. If not, figure it out together, learn, don't be afraid of the spreadsheets. And have those awkward conversations. Set up the travel savings fund. Make sure that you're automatically transferring funds over into an IRA or a 401k or something like that. But I will tell you, we've been together for 2 decades now. It takes work. It's a lot of work, but consistency is the key with the family summit. So I'm going to share my screen one last time. And here it is. Oops. Share screen. Where'd it go? Present. Oops. All right. Window. There we go. All right. So we're on finances. Okay. So here are some questions to be asking yourselves as you prepare for your first summit. Where do you want to be in 6 to 12 months from now in each of those 7 core areas that we went through? So faith, family, fun, finances, fortress, okay? Fitness, setting specific goals. So SMART goals, smart, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Really important to have this attached to the goals in each of those sections. So if you say, we want to save $5,000 in order to go to Bali next year, how much do you need to be saving per week and per month in order to get you there? And you already have some other money set aside in order to get there. We are huge proponents of not getting into credit card debt. And in fact, it was one of the first things we did after combining our finances. And I'm really happy and grateful to say that we have zero credit card debt. And it's been that way for a long time, but this is one of the ways that we were able to get there. Nearly 2 decades of talking about finances and over 10 plus years of having our annual summit check-ins. Not one time did we skip over the finance piece. And oftentimes our finance conversations would happen monthly and quarterly, especially when we first started our first tech startup together. We were living on ramen again in our early 30s and not college students. So again, it takes very, very intentional planning. Okay. Attainable, relevant, time bound, how to keep the ball rolling. So sharing your goals with a friend, with a family member, between the two of you, putting it up on a whiteboard in your office, right? Holding yourself accountable. Setting up a life dinner. That was something that we did on a monthly basis. We still have date nights about once a month. So being able to have a life dinner where you can drop in and check in with each other on the different areas that you might be talking about. And maybe at a certain season in your life, it's really important that you continue talking about family, whatever that means in your dynamic, right? All right. So we have some timelines in here. In the morning, you can drop in and go for a hike. Maybe you're having lunch together and working on and reflecting on the questions. Maybe there's some journaling time. You want to record your previous years. So maybe you spend some time going through the past year's notes, which is always super fun. And then maybe after lunchtime, you start diving into each of those 7 sections. Leave time for break, stretching, and snacks or a light hike. If you're ready, work through the big, better than New Year's questions. Setting your SMART goals, have a delicious and rewarding dinner. So this is just an example timeline of how we have ran our summits. Okay. So 7 connectors. This is like a note-taking format. Again, I did this just in Google Docs. You can do it in Word or Evernote or whatever your note-taking system is. And then we have one for each separate year going back 10 plus years. I think our first one started in 2007-ish. So imagine going back that far and being able to take those notes. It's one of the biggest gifts I have ever given myself. So please do it. Okay. How can we spruce up our home? Mel wants to, these are real too, by the way, save for a kitchen table to host dinner with friends. We did not own a kitchen table because we lived in a very small condo. So I was like, how are we going to host friends for dinner if we don't own one? Install a ceiling fan so we can sleep better in our room. It was just very hot and not a lot of air, and we did not have a ceiling fan. So we saved up for that. Flash wants to help with the new bathroom light so we can actually see, install laundry room lighting. And so you'll see then our action items were to set up an auto bank transfer for home furnishing budget. So we were able through our Capital One savings account to set up a way to have these funds transfer from a Wells Fargo checking account into Mel's slush fund, Flash's slush fund. Yes, everyone calls my husband Flash. Travel budget, right? And so we have all these different buckets that we can do that in. Start saving for a new TV and a second computer monitor by end of May so Flash can start working from home by June 15th. That is one of our real notes from our summit planning. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope you enjoyed this very brief intro to how we have hosted our annual summit planning meetings going back 10 plus years. If you would like access to this PDF and the whole framework I just showed you, shoot me a DM and I will gladly send it to you. And as always, if you have any questions or ideas or confusion, let me know. You can tell I'm really passionate about this. I've taught it to almost all of my employees at my previous companies. We talk about this framework with our friends. I created this downloadable just a couple of years ago during COVID and finally dusted it off. And my husband and I have had a lot of change in our lives recently. And so we are also getting ready to run the same process and set our dates and have our 2023 annual summit planning meeting. Thanks so much for joining me and so appreciate it.